Oh, goodness. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Call the Cops. My name is Officer Jamie Keneally. Before we get started on tonight's show, I want to thank the guests from our last show. And if you saw it. You know that show rocked the house. This one's going to be as good. But members of the Pipes and Drums were in studio talking about the Boston Police Gaelic column, Eric Kraus and Joe Cheevers, and it's, again, it's one of the best shows we've done, had a blast, and I want to thank those guys for coming in studio. Now, as for tonight's show, we have the department's chronologist. What is a chronologist? Well, that's part of the reason he's here tonight. We're talking about Bobby Anthony, Officer Bobby Anthony. You also may know him as the head hockey coach of East Boston High School. He's a well-known guy, to say the least. But tonight, we're going to talk about an interesting subject matter. In a few weeks, the department will be remembering and commemorating the department's first ever African-American police officer, a guy by the name of Horatio Homer, who broke the color barrier, if you will, back in December of 1878. Well, come to find out, Horatio Homer died in 1923, 4 years after he retired, and he was a police officer and then a sergeant in a career that spanned about 40 years. But in the process of doing his research, and this is pretty interesting, in the process of doing his research, Bobby discovered that Horatio Homer was buried in Brighton, but in the process of being buried, there was no gravestone to mark who he was, and what he represented. So on June 26th, at the Evergreen Cemetery in Brighton, the wrong, if you will be righted, and a ceremony and a gravestone dedication will commence or will take place. Police Commissioner Ed Davis will be there. The mayor will be attending, and again, it's all about, I guess, righting a wrong and remembering and commemorating history. Now, we got some video, and this isn't the first time that Bobby Anthony, the department chronologist, has helped us understand the history of our department. Now, this was a scene about 3 years ago, 2007, I believe, right?
2007, that's correct.
2007, that's tonight's guest. I'm giving you a sneak preview, Bobby Anthony. Yeah, he's a handsome man, to say the least. But on that day, the department remembered the first officer ever killed in the line of duty. His name was Ezekiel Hodson, and Ezekiel, over 150 years ago, was shot and killed in East Boston. He was in the process of breaking up a burglary, or he came across a couple of burglars, and he was shot and killed, 1857. Now, there was no mark, memorial, dedication, if you will, to honor Ezekiel, but Bobby saw that, corrected that, and that was some of the video from 3 years ago. And on that day, we caught up to a family member, Captain Murray and Bobby himself. Here's what they were saying on that day back in 2007, October of 2007.
I thought it was a wonderful ceremony, and I think it was a tribute to the police department in both regards, in the past and in the present, of how they conducted themselves in their search and so forth of this. It was, I think, really inspiring.
150 years ago, after his tragic death, his wife and infant child moved out of state, and no one ever heard from them again. And other branches of the family tree continued to grow and prosper, but his branch of the tree, his direct descendants, died off, and no one ever knew about Ezekiel Hodson. So in addition to the Boston Police today remembering his ultimate sacrifice, the first police officer killed in the line of duty, we've been also able to inform all the family members from all the other branches of this very historic colonial family about their relative who paid the ultimate sacrifice.
The biggest key, I think, was having one of the Hudson's relatives come forward, which quite a few of them I have spoke to today, but the eldest one that was there, she came up to me and thanked me from her heart, which was kind of touching. That, she said that, thank you for telling the story. And I think the story has been told, and what happens from today is what's the word I'm looking for? What happens today is irrelevant. I mean, this is all transpired, and now we have a place that we can come down and reflect upon Ezekiel and for the job that he did for the Boston Police Department.
So again, if you're just tuning in, this is all about remembering history, remembering officers who paid the ultimate or made the ultimate sacrifice. And now I guess it's safe to say, thanks to Bobby Anthony, thanks to Margaret Sullivan, who's the department historian, now it's time to remember and honor the man you see on your screen. This is Horatio Homer. Now, that's not a name you hear often, Horatio. But Horatio Homer, again, the first African-American officer in the history of the Boston Police Department, joined the department in 1878, worked here, and you're looking at Boston Police Headquarters, which at the time, I think we said was in Pemberton Square. But Horatio Homer, first African-American officer in 1878, worked with the department for 40 years, retired as a sergeant, and come June 26th at was it the Evergreen?
The Evergreen.
Evergreen Cemetery in Brighton. We're going to remember Horatio Homer, in part because of who he is, but also as a result of Bobby's research, they discovered that there was no gravestone, no marking to remember this man at the Evergreen Cemetery in Brighton. So June 26th, a dedication, gravestone dedication will take place. And there he is, Horatio Homer, the first African-American officer in the history of the Boston Police Department. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest, Robert Bobby Anthony, head coach of East Boston High School, everybody. Okay. How's Eastie looking this year before we get into Horatio
Well,
stuff?
Eastie's, we're struggling a little bit, but we're trying to get some more bodies into the school in order to try to bring the program back up to
Coaching,
par.
I heard, was an issue.
Coaching is.
I don't mean to ask a tough question, but
coaching's a problem.
who's
there.
the coach again?
Well, I'm the head coach.
You know what? I retract that question. I apologize for that. All right, brother, great to have you here. And you've got an interesting position now with the department, but you're not the historian. Margaret Sullivan is the historian.
Correct.
Your job is that of department chronologist. What does that mean?
Basically, that entails trying to get to the facts that Margaret has brought to light when she found Sergeant Homer and found that he was the first African-American police officer appointed to our job. And what we do there is we basically find the information, put it together, and try to put a story. A chronologist is basically a storyteller.
Storyteller. Or in your case, almost a history detective. And Davey, feel free to just roll some of the pictures are interesting, or just interesting of Horatio. But the obvious question, Bobby, why do this? Why is it important to remember the first African-American officer? Obviously, it's an important time in the department's history, but why do this?
Well, I believe that since Horatio came on the job, he broke the color barrier from that perspective. And with him being the first African-American police officer buried in an unmarked grave, it kind of brings to light that as being a fellow in blue, we don't forget our own.
Well, let me ask you this. So was the decision made, you're doing some history, you're trying to find out who the first African-American officer was, and in the process of discovering that fact, you then found out when you went to the cemetery in Brighton that there was no gravestone there?
That's correct. And what we did was we brought this to the commissioners.
But tell this. So you went out, you found out who it was. You go to check his gravestone. Tell that story when you go to the cemetery and you